The greatest paradox you must understand is this. To gain control, you must first release the illusion of control. Have you ever noticed how the more you try to control everything around you, the more chaotic your life becomes? Most people spend their entire lives attempting to control what cannot be controlled. They struggle against the river of life, fighting the current, exhausting themselves against forces far greater than their own. And in this struggle, they miss the deeper truth. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control other people. You cannot control time. You cannot control the market. You cannot control the past. You cannot control death. But you can control your mouth. You can control your mode. You can control your money. And most importantly, you can control your mind. This is the ancient wisdom that has been forgotten in modern times. The warriors of old understood that true power comes not from dominating others, but from mastering oneself. Think of the bamboo in the strongest wind. What does it do? It bends, it yields, and because of this yielding nature, it remains unbroken while the rigid oak shatters and falls. Most people seek control in the wrong direction, thus outward, but you have the opportunity to seek it inward. Look at your life right now. Observe it with clear eyes. How much suffering comes from attempting to control what is beyond your control? How much peace is lost, chasing the illusion of certainty in an uncertain world? The mouth, the mood, the money, the mind. These four domains contain the keys to your liberation. Your consciousness is like a vast, clear mountain lake. When the lake is disturbed, ripples distort every reflection. But when the lake is still, it perfectly mirrors reality as it is. Your true nature is this stillness, not the ripples, not the disturbance, the stillness. But society has programmed you differently, hasn't it? Society says react, consume, desire, fear, compete, compare. Society fills your lake with constant ripples, with waves that never cease. And in this turbulent water, how can you see clearly? How can you know yourself? The first truth you must understand is this: your mouth speaks what your mind contains. Have you noticed how most people speak without thinking, without awareness? Words spill forth, creating ripples that spread far beyond what they can see or imagine. Words create worlds. Words destroy worlds. Words heal. Words wound. Words build. Words demolish. Your speech is not merely communication, it is creation. When you speak from a place of reactivity, from unconsciousness, from the automated programs of your conditioning, what worlds are you creating? What reality are you manifesting? The mastery of the mouth begins with the simple practice of the sacred space between stimulus and response, the moment where choice resides. Before you speak, ask yourself 3 questions. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Words that meet these 3 criteria become arrows of light, precisely aimed, creating exactly what you intend. Words that fail these criteria become poisoned arrows that often return to wound the archer. Most people speak to fill silence, because silence frightens them. Most people speak to impress others, because they doubt their inherent value. Most people speak to release internal tension, rather than transform it into wisdom. But you can learn to speak only when speech improves upon silence. Your mood means your emotional state. This is the second domain of mastery. The untrained mind is a slave to emotional weather. Like leaves blown about by the wind, most people are carried wherever their emotions take them. Happy when circumstances please them, angry when events disappoint them, anxious when the future threatens them, depressed when the past haunts them. This is to live at the mercy of forces beyond your control. But what if I told you that emotions are not commands you must obey? What if I told you that feelings are merely weather patterns crossing the sky of your consciousness. You are not the clouds, you are the sky. The clouds of emotion, anger, fear, desire, joy, sadness, they come, they go, sometimes dark and threatening, sometimes light and pleasant, but the sky remains, spacious, open, unchanged. This is your true nature. When a storm of anger arises, most people become the storm. They say, I am angry. But the deeper truth is I am experiencing anger. There is a witness within you that observes the anger without becoming it. To find this witness is to discover freedom from the tyranny of mood. Breathe in, breathe out. Feel the breath enter your body. Feel the breath leave your body. Can you sense the space between your thoughts? Can you feel the presence that is witnessing this moment? That presence is you, not your thoughts about yourself, not your emotions about yourself, not the story you tell about yourself, but the pure awareness in which all these things appear. This is the foundation of mood mastery. When you identify with the weather, you suffer with every change in the forecast. When you recognize yourself as the sky, you remain at peace regardless of conditions. The third domain is money, namit, the material realm. Most people believe wealth is something to chase, to pursue, to hunt. They exhaust themselves in this pursuit, often sacrificing the very things money is meant to enhance: health, relationships, purpose, peace. But the masters understand, money does not come from chasing. Money comes from becoming. Look at nature. The fruit tree does not chase the birds to give them fruit. It simply becomes so abundant that it naturally attracts what it requires. Your relationship with wealth reflects your relationship with yourself. When you approach money from lack, from fear, from desperate, you repel the very thing you seek. When you approach money from wholeness, from service, from creative abundance, you become magnetic to prosperity. The great illusion about money is that it creates freedom, but money without consciousness simply amplifies your existing patterns. The anxious person with money becomes more anxiously attached to protecting it. The empty person with money finds more elaborate ways to fill the void. Money is neutral. It is a form of energy. It amplifies who you already are. Ask yourself, how do you relate to the material realm? Do you grasp? Do you hoard? Do you waste? Do you fear? Do you worship? Or do you channel this energy with consciousness, with purpose, with wisdom? Your money habits did not form by accident. They are physical manifestations of your mental patterns. Change the pattern, and the manifestation must change. Most people try to change their financial situation by manipulating external circumstances: new job, new investment, new business. But lasting change comes only from within. When you master your money, you are really mastering your mind. The outer simply reflects the inner. And this brings us to the fourth domain, the source of all others, the mind itself. Your mind is both your greatest ally and your most dangerous enemy. Untamed, it creates endless suffering. Mastered, it reveals endless freedom. Most people are not masters of their mind. They are mastered by it. Thoughts come, they believe them. Desires arise, they chase them. Fears appear, they obey them. Their attention is pulled in 1,000 directions, scattered like leaves in the wind. This fragmented attention is the root of all suffering. The mind in its natural state is like a clear mirror, reflecting reality precisely as it is. But conditioning, trauma, desire, and fear distort this mirror, creating a false image of yourself and the world. You then react not to reality, but to your distorted perception of reality. But there is another way to live, a way of clarity, a way of presence, a way of power. Your mind is a vast open sky. Thoughts are merely clouds passing through, some dark and stormy, some light and pleasant. But you are not the clouds. You are the sky itself. When you identify with thoughts, you suffer with every mental storm. When you recognize yourself as the awareness in which thoughts appear, you remain at peace, regardless of mental weather. This is the foundation of mind mastery. Most people believe their thoughts unquestioningly. I think, therefore it is true. But the wise person asks, is this thought serving me? Is this thought aligned with reality? Is this thought creating the life I wish to live? Your thoughts are seeds. Plant fear, and you harvest anxiety. Plant judgment, and you harvest division. Plant gratitude, and you harvest abundance. Plant presence, and you harvest peace. What are you planting in the garden of your mind? The untrained mind jumps constantly between regretting the past and fearing the future. It rarely rests in the only moment that truly exists. This one, past and future, are mental constructs. They exist only as thoughts. The present moment is the only point where life actually happens. The only point where power resides. The only point where change is possible. When you bring your full attention to this moment, something miraculous happens. The background noise of mental chatter begins to quiet. The endless commentary, judgment, and analysis begins to still. And in this stillness, a deeper intelligence emerges. This intelligence is not of the thinking mind. It is intuitive. It is holistic. It is wise beyond the reach of reason alone. Most people never access this intelligence because they never quiet their minds enough to hear its subtle. But you have the capacity to cultivate this inner silence, to discover the power that has always resided within you, waiting to be recognized. The four domains: Mars, mode, money, mind, each connected, each flowing from the source of consciousness itself. When the mind is mastered, speech becomes purposeful and pure. When the mind is mastered, emotions become information rather than dictators. When the mind is mastered, material resources flow according to your highest intentions. When the mind is mastered, life itself becomes an expression of your deepest truth. But this mastery does not come through force. You cannot bully your mind into submission. You cannot threaten it, shame it, or punish it into cooperation. Mind mastery comes through understanding, through patience, through consistent practice. Like taming a wild horse, you must approach with respect, with firmness, with clarity of intention. The goal is not to break the spirit, but to create a partnership of trust. Most people live their entire lives without ever realizing they are not their thoughts, they are the awareness in which thoughts appear. Most people never discover they are not their emotions. They are the space in which emotions arise and dissolve. Most people never understand they are not their possessions. They are the consciousness that experiences the material realm. Most people never realize they are not their words. They are the silence from which meaningful speech emerges. This realization is the beginning of true power. Not power over others, but power over yourself. The only domain where mastery matters. And how does one begin this journey toward mastery? Through practice, through presence, through persistence. The path is not complicated, but it requires something rare in this distracted world: your complete attention. Now that you understand the four domains of mastery, I will share with you the practices that transform understanding into embodiment. For knowledge without practice is like a bird with one wing. It can never truly take flight. The first practice is stillness. In a world that worships motion, stillness has become revolutionary. In a culture that celebrates noise, silence has become radical. In a society that rewards constant doing, simply being has become an act of courage. Most people fear stillness, because in stillness, they must face themselves. All the distractions fall away, all the noise quiets. All that remains is the truth of who they are, beyond the roles they play, beyond the masks they wear, beyond the stories they tell themselves. But you must cultivate this stillness if you wish to master the 4 domains. Begin with just 5 minutes each day. Sit in a comfortable position. Close your eyes and simply observe your breath. Do not try to control the breath. Do not try to make it deeper or slower or different in any way. Simply observe it as it is. When thoughts arise, and they will arise like waves on the ocean, do not fight them, do not judge them, do not follow them. Simply notice sinking is happening and return your attention gently to the breath. This is not a battle to be won through force. It is a dance to be mastered through patient persistence. What you are developing through this practice is the muscle of awareness, the capacity to witness your own experience without becoming entangled in it, the ability to create space between stimulus and response. Most people live reactively. Something happens, they react automatically. Someone speaks, they respond from conditioning. A feeling arises, they become the feeling. But in the space between stimulus and response lies your freedom, your power, your humanity. This space is where the mouse is mastered, where you choose words that create rather than destroy, where you speak from wisdom rather than reaction. This space is where mood is mastered, where you relate to emotions as information rather than commands, where you remain the sky rather than becoming the weather. This space is where money is mastered, where you make decisions from abundance rather than scarcity, where you relate to the material realm as an expression of consciousness rather than a substitute for it. This space is where mind is mastered, where you recognize thoughts as tools rather than truths, where you direct your attention rather than having it stolen from you. The second practice is conscious response. When was the last time you responded to a situation rather than reacted to it? Throughout your day, ordinary moments offer extraordinary opportunities for practice. When someone criticizes you, when traffic delays you, when technology fails you, when plans collapse, these are not obstacles to your practice, they are your practice. In these moments of potential reactivity, can you create that crucial space between stimulus and response? Can you choose rather than react? The warrior of old trained not for the absence of battle, but for clarity within battle. You too must train not for the absence of challenge, but for presence within challenge. Most people believe freedom means having no constraints, but true freedom is having the capacity to respond wisely regardless of constraints. Think of yourself standing by a rushing river. The river represents all that you cannot control: other people, external events, the past, the future. Most people spend their lives trying to control the flow of the river, exhausting themselves and achieving nothing. But you can learn to build bridges across the river, to navigate it skillfully, to use its power rather than fight against it. When anger arises, breathe. When fear arises, breathe. When desire arises, breathe. Not to suppress these energies, but to create space around them, to transform reactive force into responsive power. The untrained person says what anger demands they say. The trained person speaks what wisdom guides them to speak. The untrained person follows where mood leads them. The trained person observes where mood would take them and chooses their direction. The untrained person spends according to impulse and fear. The trained person allocates resources according to values and vision. The untrained person believes whatever thoughts tell them. The trained person examines thoughts before deciding what to believe. This is the practice of conscious response, not suppression, not reaction. Response minus thoughtful, intentional, aligned with your deepest values. Begin with small moments. When the driver cuts you off in traffic. When your device malfunctions. When the line is longer than expected. These ordinary frustrations are perfect opportunities to to extend the space between stimulus and response. Then gradually work with more challenging situations. Conflicts in relationships, disappointments in work, fears about the future. Apply the same principle. Breathe. Choose response rather than reaction. What you are developing is not just a skill but a way of being. Not just a technique but a transformation of consciousness itself. The third practice is breath awareness. Your breath is the bridge between conscious and unconscious, between voluntary and involuntary, between doing and being. You can control your breath when you choose to, unlike your heartbeat or digestion. Yet when you don't consciously direct it, it continues perfectly without your intervention, unlike your speech or movement. This makes breath the perfect anchor for presence. Most people breathe without awareness. They take this miracle for granted. Thousands of breaths each day, sustaining life, yet receiving no attention. But the masters of every tradition have recognized the breath contains profound secrets. When emotions overwhelm, the breath becomes shallow and rapid. When calm prevails, the breath becomes deep and slow. When presence deepens, the breath becomes subtle and refined. Your breath reflects your mental state, but the relationship works in both directions. By consciously changing your breath, you can transform your mental state. Try this now. Take a deep breath in through your nose, filling your belly first, then your chest. Hold for a moment at the top, then exhale slowly through your mouth, emptying completely, and now return to natural breathing. Did you notice a shift, a subtle change in your physical and mental state? This is not mystical. This is biological. Your breath directly affects your nervous system, which directly affects your brain, which directly affects your consciousness. In moments of stress, your breath becomes your most powerful tool. 3 conscious breaths can interrupt the automatic cycle of reactivity. 3 conscious breaths can restore access to your higher faculties. 3 conscious breaths can return you to choice rather than compulsion. Practice bringing awareness to your breath throughout the day, not to control it, but simply to notice it. When you're walking, when you're waiting, when you're listening, when you're working. This consistent return to breath awareness builds the muscle of presence. It trains your attention to remain in the now rather than being pulled into regret about the past or anxiety about the future. And it is only in the now that mastery of the 4 domains is possible. The 4th practice is witnessing awareness. Beyond controlling the mouth, beyond managing your mood, beyond directing your money, beyond focusing your mind, there is a practice more fundamental than all others. This is the practice of witnessing, of observing your entire experience. Thoughts, emotions, sensations, perceptions without becoming entangled in it. Most people are so identified with their experience that they have no perspective on it. They are like actors who have forgotten they are in a play. They are like dreamers who don't know they're dreaming. But you can develop the capacity to witness, to observe your life as it unfolds rather than being completely absorbed in it. Close your eyes for a moment. Notice the thoughts arising in your mind. the sensations in your body, the emotions present, the sounds around you. Now ask yourself who or what is aware of all this. Who or what is noticing these thoughts, sensations, emotions, and perceptions? This noticing awareness is your essential nature, not a thought about yourself, but the awareness in which all thoughts appear, not an emotion about yourself, but the consciousness in which all emotions arise and dissolve. To identify with this witnessing awareness rather than with the content of experience. This is the heart of transformation. When you speak from witnessing awareness, your words carry truth rather than reaction. When you feel from witnessing awareness, emotions become messengers rather than masters. When you relate to money from witnessing awareness, resources flow according to wisdom rather than fear. When you think from witnessing awareness, thoughts become tools rather than traps. This witnessing is not distant or detached. It is intimately connected to experience while not being limited by it. It is like being both the ocean and the individual wave simultaneously. The practice is simple but profound. Throughout your day, occasionally, and ask who is experiencing this moment. Not as an intellectual question, but as a direct pointing to your essential nature. In time, this witnessing awareness becomes your natural state rather than an occasional insight. You begin to live from the spacious consciousness that has always been your true identity. Now let us see how these four practices, stillness, conscious response, breath, awareness, and witnessing, apply to the four domains of mastery. For the mouth, these practices create space between impulse and speech. They help you recognize when words arise from ego, fear, or habit rather than from wisdom and purpose. They transform communication from unconscious reaction to conscious creation. Most people speak from their conditioning. They repeat phrases they've heard, express opinions they've absorbed, react from patterns established long ago. But you can learn to speak from presence, from the fresh aliveness of this moment, rather than the dead patterns of the past. I ask you, how often do your words create what you truly intend? How often do they heal rather than harm? How often do they unite rather than divide? For mood, these practices help you recognize emotions as temporary weather patterns in your consciousness rather than commands you must obey. They enable you to honor feelings without being controlled by them. They transform your relationship with your emotional life from subjugation to partnership. Most people are prisoners of emotional reactivity. Pleasant feelings they grasp, unpleasant feelings they resist, and in this constant grasping and resisting, they miss the freedom that comes from simply witnessing the entire emotional spectrum with equanimity. But you can develop this witnessing, this capacity to feel fully without becoming lost in feeling. For money, these practices reveal the unconscious patterns driving your financial decisions. They illuminate where scarcity thinking, status seeking, or security obsession may be guiding your relationship with material resources. They transform money from a source of stress to an expression of values. Most people's financial choices are driven by hidden psychological needs rather than conscious intention. Money becomes entangled with identity, with safety, with worth, with power. You can disentangle these elements. You can relate to money as simply a form of energy to be channeled according to your highest wisdom. For mind, these practices develop your capacity to direct attention rather than have it captured by whatever is loudest, brightest, or most threatening. They help you recognize thoughts as tools rather than truths. They transform your relationship with your own consciousness from passive consumption to active creation. Most people's minds are like wild monkeys jumping from branch to branch, from thought to thought, with no direction or purpose. Their attention is stolen 1,000 times each day by devices, by media, by advertising, by the endless parade of stimuli in the modern world. But you can train your attention to remain where you place it. You can develop the mental strength to think what serves your evolution rather than what undermines it. These practices are not separate from life. They are not something you do in isolation and then return to normal. They are a way of being in every moment, in every interaction, in every decision. The stillness you cultivate in meditation becomes the calm center from which you speak, feel, allocate resources, and think. The conscious response you practice in daily challenges becomes your natural way of engaging with all life circumstances. The breath awareness you develop becomes your constant companion, your anchor to the present moment, regardless of external conditions. The witnessing you discover becomes your fundamental identity, the ground of being from which all expression flows. This is not self-improvement, it is self-realization. Not becoming something you are not, but recognizing what you have always been beneath the layers of conditioning and forgetting. The mouth, the mood, the money, the mind mastered not through rigid control but through awakened consciousness. And what emerges from this practice? What is the fruit of this cultivation? A life lived not from automated patterns but from awakened choice. A life expressed not from fearful contraction but from loving expansion. A life created not from unconscious habit but from conscious intention. This is the path of transformation, not a destination to reach but a way of traveling, not a fixed state to achieve but an evolving process to embody. And it begins anew in each moment, with each breath, with each choice to remember rather than forget, to awaken rather than sleep, to respond rather than react. The journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath your feet with this step in this moment exactly where you are. But what does this transformed life actually look like? How does it manifest in relationships, in work, in purpose? The true measure of transformation is not how you feel in moments of solitude and peace. It is how you show up in the messy complexity of daily existence. It is how you respond when challenged, opposed, misunderstood, or attacked. Consider how you speak when angry. Most people's words become weapons in anger, designed to wound, to punish, to dominate. But with practice, even in anger, your words can retain their connection to wisdom. You can express the energy of anger without becoming lost in it. You can communicate boundary or disagreement without attacking the fundamental worth of another. Consider how you relate to failure. Most people either deny failure through excuse and blame, or they internalize failure as identity. I am a failure. But with practice you can hold failure as information rather than definition. You can extract the lesson without absorbing the judgment. You can use failure as feedback for growth rather than evidence of unworthiness. Consider how you engage with uncertainty. Most people either deny uncertainty through rigid belief systems, or they collapse into anxiety when facing the unknown. But with practice you can remain open in uncertainty. You can act decisively without requiring absolute certainty. You can navigate the unknown with curiosity rather than fear. These are the fruits of practice. Not perfection but evolution. Not freedom from challenge but freedom within challenge. Not escape from humanity but the fullest expression of humanity. The ancient masters taught through paradox because truth often lies beyond the reach of ordinary language. They spoke of the strength found in yielding, the freedom found in discipline, the wealth found in simplicity, the power found in surrender. These paradoxes point to the transformed life that emerges from practice. The life where control comes not from controlling but from releasing the illusion of control. where mastery emerges not from domination but from partnership with the forces of existence. This is the promise of the four practices applied to the four domains. Not a life without difficulty, but a life where difficulty no longer defines you. Not a life without pain, but a life where pain no longer limits you. Not a life without challenge, but a life where challenge becomes opportunity for awakening. The path begins where you are, with this breath, with this thought, with this feeling, with this moment. The practices are always available. Stillness can be found in the midst of chaos. Conscious response can be chosen in the heat of reactivity. Breath awareness can anchor you in the storm of emotion. Witnessing can free you from identification with passing phenomena. Each moment offers a new beginning. Each breath offers a fresh opportunity. Each challenge presents a doorway to greater awakening. The path is not linear but cyclical. You will forget and remember, sleep and awaken, contract and expand. This too is part of the practice, not expecting perfection but returning again and again to presence. What does it mean to live an awakened life? How does mastery of the four domains mouth, mode, money, mind us manifest in daily existence? What does it mean to live an awakened life? How does mastery of the four domains mouth, mode, money, mind us manifest in daily existence? It is not about perfection. The masters of old understood that perfection is not the goal. Integration is the goal. Alignment is the goal. Wholeness is the goal. You will still experience anger, fear, desire. You will still have unconscious reactions. You will still make choices from conditioning rather than awareness. But increasingly you will catch yourself sooner. You will recover more quickly. You will choose more wisely. The gap between your highest understanding and your lived experience will gradually narrow. This is the path not of the perfect being, but of the awakening being. Most people live from their conditioning rather than their consciousness, from their programming rather than their presence, from their habits rather than their heart. But you, as you practice mastery of the four domains, you begin to live from a different source. Your words flow not from social conditioning, but from inner silence, from the space between thoughts where wisdom resides, from the stillness at the center of your being. These words carry a different quality. They nourish rather than deplete. They clarify rather than confuse. They unite rather than divide. Not because you are trying to be good, but because they emerge from a place beyond the separate self with its endless needs and fears. Would you recognize the difference between words spoken from conditioning and words spoken from consciousness? Consider how often one sentence spoken from presence can transform a situation that 1,000 words from reactivity would only inflame. Speaking only when your words improve upon silence, communicating not to fill space or ease discomfort, but to express truth and create connection. This is what becomes possible as you master the mouth, not through rigid control or artificial constraint, but through the natural discipline that arises from presence. You begin to notice the impulse to speak before words emerge. You feel the subtle energies that motivate communication, the desire to impress, to be right, to gain advantage, to discharge emotion. And in this noticing you find choice, the freedom to align speech with your highest intentions rather than your automatic patterns. Your emotional life transforms in similar ways. Most people live at the mercy of emotional weather. They are reactive rather than responsive, controlled rather than controlling, effects rather than causes. But you, as you practice mastery of mood, you develop a different relationship with your emotional landscape. Feelings still arise, not the full spectrum from darkest despair to brightest joy. But you no longer identify completely with these temporary states. You recognize them as weather patterns in your consciousness rather than your fundamental identity. This creates a profound shift in your experience. Difficult emotions no longer seem like failures to overcome but messengers to be heard. Pleasant emotions no longer seem like achievements to grasp, but gifts to be appreciated as they pass. You move from being a leaf blown about by emotional winds to being the tree that experiences the wind but remains rooted in deeper soil. In practice, this might look like noticing anger arising without immediately acting from it. Feeling the physical sensations, the heat, the tightness, the surge of energy without being compelled to express it destructively. It might look like experiencing anxiety without believing the catastrophic stories it tells. Feeling the flutter in your stomach, the shallowness of breath, the racing thoughts, and yet remaining anchored in the witnessing awareness that is your deeper nature. It might look like enjoying pleasure without grasping it, savoring joy, excitement, and peace while understanding their transient nature, their coming and going like all phenomena. This emotional mastery transforms your relationships as others sense in you a steadiness that is rare in this reactive world. They feel met by your presence rather than your patterns. They experience the spaciousness that allows them to be as they are rather than as you need them to be. Ask yourself, how often do you meet others from your needs rather than your fullness? How different would your relationships be if you came to them not seeking completion but offering presence? Your relationship with material resources undergoes a similar transformation. Most people relate to money from unconscious patterns established in childhood. They spend, save, invest, and give from programming they've never examined. Their financial choices are driven by psychological needs that money can never truly satisfy. The need for security, status, power, love. But as you practice mastery of money, you bring consciousness to this domain that touches every aspect of modern life. You begin to recognize the fear beneath hoarding, the emptiness beneath excessive spending, the insecurity beneath status purchases, the control beneath financial manipulation. And in this recognition comes freedom. The freedom to align your material resources with your deepest values rather than your shallowest conditioning. In practice, this might look like pausing before purchases to ask, what need am I really trying to meet here? Can it be met in a more direct way? It might look like developing a conscious relationship with wealth, neither worshipping nor demonizing money, but seeing it clearly as a form of energy that can be directed toward what truly matters to you. It might look like aligning your earning, spending, saving, and giving with your authentic purpose rather than with social expectations or unconscious fears. This financial mastery creates a sense of sufficiency regardless of actual amounts. The ancient wisdom teaches that wealth is not measured by how much you have, but by how much you need. As consciousness transforms your relationship with money, you discover the truth of this teaching directly. Your thought patterns transform most fundamentally of all. Most people are lost in a stream of automatic thinking. Their minds produce up to 70,000 thoughts per day, most recycled from yesterday, most unexamined, most accepted as reality rather than recognized as interpretation. But as you practice mind mastery, you develop a new relationship with the thinking process itself. You begin to recognize thoughts as tools rather than truths, as interpretations rather than reality, as possibilities to explore rather than certainties to defend. This creates a profound shift in your experience. No longer completely identified with the content of your thinking, you discover the spacious awareness in which thoughts arise and dissolve. The consciousness that is your essential nature. Your thoughts as clouds passing through the vast sky of your awareness. Some dark and stormy, some light and pleasant. Some fast-moving, some lingering. but all temporary, all passing, none defining the sky itself. This is what becomes possible as you practice mind mastery. Not an absence of thought, but a different relationship with thought. Not controlled thinking, but conscious thinking. In this state, creativity flows more freely because it is no longer blocked by rigid concepts of what is possible or impossible. Insight arises more readily because awareness is no longer clouded by predetermined conclusions. Peace prevails more consistently because it is recognized as your natural state rather than something to achieve through favorable circumstances. These transformations in the four domains naturally reshape your relationships with others. Most people relate from their conditioning, their needs, their fears, their expectations. Their relationships become arenas for the ego to seek validation, safety, and fulfillment of unmet childhood longings. But you, as you awaken, you begin to relate from presence rather than pattern, from wholeness rather than woundedness, from giving rather than taking. This doesn't mean you become a doormat or deny your own needs. Rather, you meet others from a place of fullness rather than emptiness. You listen not just with your ears but with your entire being. You speak not just from social programming but from inner stillness. You begin to recognize others not as means to your ends or obstacles to your desires but as consciousness wearing different masks, life expressing in different forms. Where judgment once prevailed, curiosity emerges. Where control once dominated, collaboration arises. Where fear once constricted, love now expands. This transformation is not based on forced positivity or artificial niceness. It emerges naturally as you recognize your essential nature and therefore the essential nature of all beings. Your work life transforms in equally profound ways. Most people approach work as a necessary burden, a means to financial ends, or at best a path to ego fulfillment through achievement and recognition. But as you awaken, work becomes something else entirely. It becomes service. It becomes offering. It becomes an expression of your unique gifts in response to the world's needs. This doesn't mean you must change careers, though you might if your current path is fundamentally misaligned with your values. What changes most profoundly is not what you do, but how you do it. The quality of presence you bring to each task, each interaction, each challenge. You begin to work not just with your hands or your mind, but with your entire being. You approach challenges not as burdens, but as opportunities for growth. You relate to colleagues not as competitors or tools, but as fellow travelers on the path. And paradoxically, this shift often leads to greater external success as well. Not because you're striving for it, but because excellence naturally flows from presence, creativity naturally emerges from openness, and impact naturally results from service. Consider how you meet obstacles in your work. Most people either struggle against obstacles through force and stress, or they avoid obstacles through procrastination and excuse. But with practice, you can meet obstacles with neither struggle nor avoidance. You can engage with them directly, with curiosity rather than resistance, with persistence rather than force. Consider how you approach failure. Most people take failure personally as judgment on their worth or capacity. But with practice, you relate to failure impersonally as information rather than condemnation, as temporary result rather than final verdict. Consider how you hold success. Most people grasp success tightly, claiming it as personal achievement, evidence of superiority, proof of worth. But with practice, you hold success lightly, recognizing the countless conditions and contributions that made it possible, experiencing gratitude rather than pride. This transformed relationship with work creates a life where Monday morning holds as much potential for fulfillment as Friday evening. where retirement becomes not escape from burden but transition to new expression, where purpose infuses even the most ordinary tasks with meaning. The awakened life transforms your relationship with time itself. Most people live either in regret about the past or anxiety about the future. They miss the extraordinary gift of this moment, the only moment that ever actually exists. But as you awaken, you begin to inhabit time differently. You still plan for the future, you still learn from the past, but your center of gravity shifts increasingly to the present. This creates a profound shift in your experience. Time no longer seems like an enemy racing past too quickly or stretching endlessly in boredom. Time becomes the medium of experience, neither to be rushed through nor wasted, but to be fully inhabited. The awakened life also transforms your relationship with the natural world. Most people see nature as either resource to be exploited, background to be ignored, or aesthetic to be consumed. They miss the profound interconnection, the fact that they are nature, inseparable from the web of life. But as you awaken, you begin to experience the natural world not as separate other, but as extended self. You feel the air in your lungs as continuous with the atmosphere. You recognize the water in your body as part of the planetary water cycle. You experience your solid form as composed of elements recycled through countless previous forms. This shift is not intellectual but visceral, not conceptual but perceptual. You don't just think about interconnection, you feel it directly. And this feeling transforms your actions. Care for the natural world becomes not obligation but natural expression, like caring for your own body. Sustainable choices become not sacrifice but obvious wisdom, like not cutting off your own arm. The awakened life transforms your relationship with your own body. Most people either worship the body through obsessive attention or reject it through neglect and abuse. They miss the middle path of partnership, of listening to the body's wisdom while guiding it with consciousness. But as you awaken, you begin to experience your body not as possession but as expression, not as separate object but as materialized consciousness, not as enemy to control or master to serve, but as intimate ally in the journey of awakening. This shift transforms how you eat, move, rest, and attend to symptoms. Food becomes not just fuel or comfort but communion. Movement becomes not just exercise or performance but expression. Rest becomes not just recovery or escape but integration. Symptoms become not just problems to fix but messages to understand. The awakened life transforms your relationship with difficulty itself. Most people either avoid difficult experiences through denial and distraction, or they become defined by difficult experiences through trauma and victimhood. They miss the transformative potential in the very experiences they most wish to escape. But as you awaken, you begin to meet difficulty with neither avoidance nor identification. You develop the capacity to be with what is, however uncomfortable, without becoming it. To feel pain fully without becoming pain. To experience loss completely without becoming loss. To face limitation directly without becoming limitation. This capacity transforms suffering itself. Pain may remain, but suffering, the mental resistance to pain, gradually dissolves. Loss may occur, but the sense of being personally diminished by loss slowly fades. Limitation may exist, but the feeling of being defined by limitation progressively releases. What remains is a profound resilience. Not because you avoid being hurt, but because you can be hurt without being destroyed. Not because you escape difficulty, but because you can move through difficulty without being defined by it. The awakened life transforms your relationship with death itself. Most people either deny death through desperate grasping at permanence, or they collapse before death through nihilism and despair. They miss the way death gives meaning to life, the way impermanence makes each moment precious, the way limitation makes choice significant. But you, as you awaken, you begin to hold death neither as enemy to fear nor as relief to welcome, but as natural completion of the cycle that began with birth. You recognize that everything that arises also dissolves, everything that forms also dissolves, everything born also dies. And in this recognition, paradoxically, life becomes more vivid, more significant, more worthy of full engagement, because it is limited, because it will end, because every moment is unrepeatable, irreplaceable, utterly unique. The mouth, the mood, the money, the mind, each transforms through practice, each aligned with consciousness rather than conditioning, each expressing your true nature rather than your false identity. This is the promise of awakening. Not escape from humanity, but full expression of humanity. Not denial of life, but complete participation in life. Not rejection of the world, but transformation of how you experience and engage with the world. The journey never ends. There is no final state of arrival, no permanent enlightenment that forever liberates from practice. There is only the spiral path of ever-deepening awakening, ever-expanding consciousness, ever more complete integration. But with each step on the path, suffering diminishes not because external conditions change, but because your relationship with conditions transforms. Freedom expands not because constraints disappear, but because you discover the boundless space within every constraint. Peace deepens not because conflict ceases, but because you touch the silence that holds all sound. The four domains mouth, mood, money, mind become not areas of desperate control, but arenas of natural mastery. Not through force, but through alignment. Not through struggle, but through surrender to your true nature. The masters of old spoke in paradox because truth lies beyond the grasp of ordinary language. They said, to truly live you must die before you die. To truly speak you must find the silence behind words. To truly feel you must discover the witness of all feelings. To truly prosper you must recognize the wealth that cannot be lost. These are not poetic metaphors but direct pointers to reality as it is when seen clearly, without the distortions of conditioning and reactivity. This clarity is your birthright. This awakening is your natural state. This transformation is not the achievement of something new but the recognition of what has always been present. The greatest paradox of control is this: true mastery comes not from controlling but from releasing the illusion of control. Not from grasping but from allying. Not from forcing but from aligning with the deeper currents of existence itself. The mouth, the mood, the money, the mind. Four domains of apparent limitation that when approached with consciousness reveal themselves as gateways to limitless freedom. The awakened life awaits not in some distant future but in this very moment. Not through escaping who you are but through becoming fully who you already are beneath the layers of forgetting. The path begins exactly where you stand. The journey unfolds with this very breath. The transformation occurs in this precise moment. Will you remember? Will you awaken? Will you master the four domains not through desperate control but through conscious alignment with your true nature? The choice is yours. It has always been yours, and it is made anew in each moment, with each word, with each feeling, with each decision, with each thought. To gain control, release the illusion of control. To master life, surrender to life. To find freedom, embrace limitation. To discover peace, welcome disturbance. This is the wisdom of the ages translated into the language of this moment. The same truth that has awakened beings throughout time offered now as invitation to your own awakening. The mouth, the mood, the money, the mind. 4 gates to one truth, 4 paths to one destination, 4 expressions of one reality. The awakened life is calling. How will you answer?